My name is Sylvester Henderson. I am the CEO of Professor for Life Incorporated. At Professor for Life Incorporated, we interview academics and well-known professionals all over the world. I am so excited today to interview my dear friend, Dr. Reverend Edward Harris, who is the pastor of the Agape Fellowship AME Zion Church. Welcome, Reverend Harris.
Thank you very much, Professor Henderson. Thank you for having me, and look forward to our conversation together. God bless you.
All right. Reverend Harris, can you introduce yourself to our digital media academic world? Tell us where you grew up, your degree accomplishments, where you went to college, and all those things.
Be happy to. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My mother was from Rocky Mount, North Carolina. So when my grandparents got older, my grandmother had to take care of my grandfather. She moved us to Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and I grew up there. Went to middle school and high school there, and started college there at East Carolina University. That was way back in the late 70s. And my first 2 years of school, Doc, I got to tell you, I majored in socializing. And so I had some challenges, and I went ahead and had to go to the School of Hard Knocks. I got a PhD in that one. I then came to California selling books door to door with a company called Southwest Publishing Company in 1980. 1981, I came to Northern California selling books for that same company. As a result of that, I ended up long story short, got robbed by the people that I was living with, and decided not to be a burden on my mother. So I stayed in California. So I got a job, went to the military, worked 25 years at AAA, and I retired there in 2009, 2010. Meanwhile, in between time, I went back to school. I went to a number of community colleges and finally finished at St. Mary's in Moraga with my bachelor's in management. That was in 2000, because Katura was born 2003. That was 2004, yeah. And so then I went ahead and continued to pursue my degree. I got a master's also from St. Mary's College in Moraga in management, in leadership. And now I am finished writing my dissertation. I'm waiting to defend soon on my doctorate at the Methodist Theological School in Ohio, concentrating on global leadership in an urban environment. And my doctoral thesis is actually focused on reducing recidivism by focusing on the family.
Wow, that's quite a life journey. Thank you for sharing that with us, Reverend Harris. Can you describe your work and obligation as a pastor and community leader? We know that you started an AME Zion Church Agape Fellowship. I know it's in East County, and it had several locations. You're in Brentwood now, or Antioch now, or?
I'm currently in Antioch. Yes, I started my ministry work, if you will. I was a member of the Kyle's Temple AME Zion Church in Vallejo, California, back in the late '90s, and my first pastorate was at the Stewart Chapel AME Zion Church in Redwood City. As you know, we're Methodists, and by Methodists, that means we're itinerant ministers. So we get a 1-year assignment each year. The bishop assigns us to a new location. We can have multiple years at the same location, but they're only 1 year at a time. So I served in Redwood City for about 5 years. I served in San Mateo at the St. James AME Zion Church for about almost 2 years, a year and a half. We had some challenges happening within our area, so we had some movement. I pastored in Palo Alto, California, at the University AME Zion Church for about 5 years, and then I was moved down to Merced, California. So I served in the Valley.
Wow.
For about 5 years. And then around 2016, we got a new bishop, and the new bishop showed up in 2017. He gave me an assignment to plant a church in East County. I'd been traveling about an hour and a half to get to every church. You know, my daughter, Katura, she actually grew up in the backseat of a car watching videos. I tell you, I know all of that. Dora the Explorer and Lilo and Stitch. I can remember that in my mind because that's all the stuff that she watched. One of the things she watched also is Veggie Tales. So now the Agape Fellowship Church, we started in Brentwood, and then as we moved on, what's interesting about that, we started the church for July 4th weekend. And we planted the church. It was planted at, get this, it was at the Veterans Memorial Park on Balfour and Griffin on the bocce ball field, because that's how we started the church. So we met there at the park there until October when the weather changed, and then the Lord blessed us to have an upper room experience. We met in the bowling alley upstairs where my daughter's basketball team used to have their year-end celebrations, and then from there we stayed there, moved across the street to a place, interesting enough, a guy, one of my preacher steward, my right-hand guy, we raised our daughters together, named Keith Butler. We had been talking about planting a church in the area because I was always gone. I missed my daughter's games. A lot of times they had to take her. We picked her up after service. So I was like, I need to start a church in the area. So luckily enough, we have been driving around, sat in this parking lot and said, this is where we're going to plant the church. And ironically enough, the Lord let us go there on the corner of Balfour and Brentwood Boulevard. It was a place there. It was a bookstore at the time, got converted to the On the Way Worship Center. So we met there, had a perfect setup, stage, sound system, had a wonderful area for social hall and that type of thing. And the then bishop helped us pay the rent because, man, I tell you, do you know that real estate costs a lot? You live in real estate, you know, real estate costs a whole lot of money. So we were paying $6,000 a month to use the building,
Wow.
or $3,000 a month to use the building half-time. Then as time would happen, the minister there decided he was going to move on and do ministry elsewhere. So we couldn't cover the $6,000 bill. So we moved home, and we participated from home for a while. Then we moved over to Grace Bible Fellowship and rented some space from my good friend, Reverend Kirkland Smith over there. And then COVID came, and we were too close to have continued to stay with social distancing. So what happened, we went back home, and then that's when we started using the online services, the internet, to broadcast our service. Never thought I was going to be a TV evangelist, but here I am. We all are TV evangelists now, but that's happened. And then we moved from there. I moved to Pittsburgh, served there for a while until we were having problems with the space we were renting there. And then the space came up in Antioch. We have a unique service. My former wife, Reverend Edward and Richard B. Hayes, our son, based on both reverends and elders in the AME Zion Church, needed to work. And so they were working. They are church musicians as well as ministers. So they work in the morning, and we have service in the afternoon. So we have an alternative service, as you would think. We start at 1:45 in the afternoon. And what I like to say is that that's for all the people that stayed out late on Saturday night, couldn't get up early in the morning. The people that had to do their laundry or make sure they got themselves together. They could watch the early game, come to service at 1:45. We're done usually about by 3:15. They can go back, catch the afternoon game, put their feet up for the rest of the day, and they would have got a bit of the word. So we're busy doing that, work in the community. We are in East Contra Costa County, and there's a big initiative going right now. The county just approved the implementation of the African American Holistic Wellness and Resource Hub. I sit on the TCAB, which is called the Transitional Community Advisory Board, for that, which is responsible for getting the hub process up off the ground. And we're really excited about the work that we do in the community as well in the school districts, working with young people, trying to give them a positive male role model and trying to meet the needs of the community. I tell people all the time, I am actually, when they say, what do you do? I tell them I'm in the people success business. And whether it's facilitating classes or doing after school programs or meeting with somebody at the church or praying for somebody, it's all about people success. And with God as our focus, we can be successful, especially in a day and age like now.
You know what, Pastor Harris, you have said a whole lot, especially around the fact that you work with not only children, but you work with the community leaders. You sit on various boards. I want to ask a question about generally at your church as a pastor. In colleges and sometimes in life, organizations have a particular theme. What type of message do you focus on with your congregation, Agape Fellowship, and do you have like an overall pastoral theme that you focus on more than any?
I'm glad you asked that question. When we were praying about the name of the church, we were given Agape Fellowship, Agape being God's unconditional love and fellowship. So we focus on Agape's God's unconditional love in fellowship, and we focus on building a church absent of the reason that people leave church. So we want to have those opportunities where you sitting in my seat, you parked in my parking space, you stepped on my toes, you're not supposed to be on my pew, the backbiting, all the things that cause churches to have rifts and people to leave. That is the focus of Agape Fellowship, making sure that we can meet the needs of the people where they are and support them through God's unconditional love.
You know what? Wow, that's amazing. Can you, wow, that really is amazing. Can you share more information about your work as a pastoral advocate for a community of colors?
Absolutely. As in the faith-based community, many times I found myself being the advocate for those who are underserved and underrepresented in our societies. Many times those are those that are broken, lost, lonely, left out. In the book of James, chapter 1, around the 27th verse, it says, true religion is caring for the widows and the orphans and not getting caught up in the way of the world. And so I try to always make sure I'm speaking truth to power, making sure that those individuals that are in elected positions understand. I meet often regularly with the city council. I go to city council meetings. I'm working with the Antioch Police Department as well to restore their chaplaincy program, which is connecting with community policing and connecting with the community. As you may have heard, Antioch has had some problems over the years with the people and the police department, and has been under judicial oversight from the DOJ for a while. So as getting in there, trying to restore hope and restore health, to build bridges and bonds and make sure that we are all a community that is walking together, working together, and living together so that we can have more unity in the community and to make sure that God is pleased with what we're doing. With that, I'm in the school district as well, trying to be working with a young lady, her name is Velma Wilson, working with her as a school district's parent-student liaison, where the teachers don't always have an opportunity to interface with the parents. They give us an opportunity to interface, to deal with the issues that they can't, advocate for those children who sometimes are late for school, who the teachers and the administration don't really know the children's lives and what they deal with at home. And some of these young kids are actually raising their brothers and sisters themselves. We found that out also during COVID when they were trying to get technology into everyone's home. They found out more about people's lives. You know, we grew up, and you and I are about the same age, I believe. We grew up as latchkey kids. We could go home and do what we needed to do, and we were afraid that our parents were going to kill us if we didn't go home, take off those school clothes and put on those play clothes and make sure we got our homework done first and make sure we got back in by the time the street lights came on. But nowadays, people have to work 2 and 3 jobs, and they leave the children basically to their own devices, making sure that they look at social media, tablets, iPads are raising our kids, but they need strong, positive role models. And in our communities, Black and Brown, we found that we've been kind of strip mined of our African-American male population that is positive. And that's why I'm also working on the dissertation that talks about focusing on the family to reduce recidivism, the traumas and the damage that's done because of someone being incarcerated, the broken trust, to try to make sure that bed that people come back to is a bed that they can rest in and a bed that they can grow in and be accepted. And sometimes you have to have healing circles, and you have to have some way for people to vent. Those individuals who were the breadwinners in many cases, whether it be legal or illegal, were bringing money in the house. And when they're gone, that money's gone. And some of those other people have to step up and step out of their own comfort zones. Children are stuck because they don't have anybody to meet them at their recitals and go to their ball games and parent-teacher conferences. And that's kind of the things that I try to make sure we do as Agape Fellowship to bridge the gap.
Wow. You know what? I can tell that you are very involved in the community. I want to ask a question, because this question is so profound to me. You know, having worked in the church world myself as a musician and kind of like a artistic administrator for so many mega years, I noticed that, and I've really noticed when I met your family, that I didn't know too much about the AME Zion Church.
Right.
But I'm saying that most people in the AME Zion Church are extremely educated, and I'm very impressed with that, because I've noticed that in the Baptist church, people are able to obtain pastoral jobs and all with no education at all. But I've noticed that in the Methodist church, or the AME Zion in particular, you can't hardly do anything unless you have extreme knowledge. And I'm very impressed with that. And I'm wondering, what is your take on how your church support higher education, and what are your beliefs around higher education, and just the role of the clergy in general?
Wow, that's a big question. Let me get a second to wrap my thoughts around that. One of the things that we have to do as clergy is serve the present age. And in order for us to serve the present age, we've got to be aware and knowledgeable about what's going on. One of the tenets of the design and the structure of the Methodist Church, and especially the AME Zion Church, which started in 1796 in New York. Back then, the AME Church started around that same time in Philadelphia, under Richard Allen. And the challenge is that part of the problem during the times they moved out of the area out of the Methodist Church as body as itself, because of discrimination, because of racial challenges so they pulled out, and they both started out as the African Methodist Episcopal Church, all AME, but because one was in New York and one was in Philadelphia, it caused problems governmentally, because we couldn't have organizations across state lines. So they stayed AME. We turned to the AME Zion, and Zion for us actually represents Jerusalem. Zion and Jerusalem are interchangeable. And so as we look at that, in order for us to serve the present age and to meet people where they are, we have to have some foundational education. And as we start, you can be a lay exhorter and share the word. Then we have levels: a local preacher. When you move from a local preacher, then you can move to a traveling preacher, where during those times, you are studying all the time to get the background that you need to support you as one who's going to interact with people overall. So then as a traveling preacher, we have a course of study that you have to have for at least 2 years. And then that takes in our polity, it takes in our history, it takes in our doctrine, it takes in the studies from the book of discipline as well, to understand how we are formulated and how we're structured. There's 2 books that we use primarily in the Methodist Church, and that is the Holy Bible and our book of discipline, which kind of covers all the ins and outs of everything that we do. It's our governance. And so because of our governance, we have followed that. We have to finish this particular course of study. While we're in that course of study for the first 2 years, we're on trial. And being on trial, that means that we can determine if we want to do this, or if we don't want to do it, we can stop. Both of us are being looked at. And then after that, we have opportunity for our first ordination. We've got 2 ordinations in our Methodist denomination. One is an ordination as a deacon, which is a clergy role, unlike in the Baptist church, is a lay role. But deacons can do everything but consecrate the elements and also consecrate deaconess. So they
Oh, wow.
they cannot consecrate the elements, but they can assist in serving, and they can do all the other things. And like in Acts chapter 6, we found out that in order for the apostles to be able to do their work, they couldn't do everything. So that's how the diaconate came about. And so the diaconate for us is a clerical role. After that, in the course of studies, it's about 4 years for that. Then one can be elevated to a level called the elder, ordained as an elder in the church. And as an elder in the church, we have all the rights and responsibilities of doing everything. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, our bishops are elders in the church who have been consecrated. And so they're elected and the like. But meanwhile, we're also, you ask about education, we're also encouraged to be lifelong learners. And in being lifelong learners, for a while in the Methodist Church, it was all about making sure that you had the credentials to be able to support your position, your role, and the like. And we continue to matriculate on. I'm excited about finishing my dissertation and taking the full role of doctor. I can be called doctor now, and I appreciate you doing that early. There's a distinction called ABD, and I don't want to use that all but the dissertation, but it's only accepted in academic areas anyway. But as we continue to grow and to learn and to expand, we find that there are avenues where we can connect with people differently. Many of our ministers, our clergy, are operating in sociology and psychology, because as clergy, we find and meet people exactly where they are. And a lot of times people say pray about it, but God's given more resources than just prayer. He's given doctors and he's given medication. He's given a pattern and a place for us to be able to work out our soul salvation and be healed, but just by prayers. You know, when Joshua and they came down and dealt with the walls of Jericho, they had to get up and walk around the wall 7 days, and they had to follow the instruction. And in order for us to be in the discipline, we have to be disciplined. And one of the education is one of our disciplines that we focus on.
Wow. Those are a lot of different roles that you have to, you go from like layperson to the deacon role and after the deacon role, you go to the pastor role.
After the deacon role, you can go to elder role. Now, deacons can also serve as pastors, but they still have the caveat that they are not able to consecrate their elements or consecrate deaconess in their congregation. So then that's when they lean on the elders to do that for them, but they still carry out the work as pastor at that particular location.
And so would the elder be considered the pastor? Like your role, are you an elder and a pastor?
Yes, I'm an elder and a pastor in the church. Reverend K, for example, you mentioned her a minute ago, my former wife, she is an elder in the church, but not a pastor. Reverend Richie is an elder in the church, but not a pastor. What we've gotten to recently to embrace a bit more than we had is that there are other disciplines of ministry. And at one point, it was a thought that you didn't get ordained unless you were going to be a pastor. That was the path. But now there's so much more work, chaplaincy, for example, and ministry of music, and those require sometimes the elevation and the position of elder to be able to carry out a lot of different work. With the distinction of most of the world, I guess you would say, the difference between the elder and the deacon really doesn't make a difference to them. You're just a reverend, and but in the hierarchy of things, for example, as I'm an elder, there is a position that is called the presiding elder that presides over a district. And so while you have several pastors in place within the district, the presiding elder is the one who is the supervisor or the overseer, if you will, of the district. And in the Church of God in Christ, for example, they have overseers. That's their title. And so the presiding elder works between the bishop and the elder to make sure, or the pastor, to make sure everything is handled decently and in order.
So the bishop role, now, is there anyone above the bishop, or how many bishops are in the AME Zion Methodist organization?
In the AME Zion Church, we serve around the world. And because we serve around the world, we have 12 bishops who form a board of bishops. And the board of bishops regulates and manages the overall movement of the denomination, if you will. Associated with them also are elected positions, or appointed positions called general officers, who specifically basically take care of the day-to-day actions. Like we've got a COO and a CFO, and those are actual general officer positions. Now, those people can be deacons and they can be elders, but they also work alongside of the bishops as part of the administrative roles of the denomination. And so the board of bishops is regulatory. Each one of our bishops of the 12 has a episcopal area. And so all of the episcopal areas around the world are covered by these 12 bishops. And then we have the other piece, the governing body, is the general conference. And the general conference is the one that elects bishops into position. Wow. So the form of governance in the AME Zion Church is really, we have a conference as a local conference called a quarterly conference. We have a district conference. We have a annual conference. And those things, the local conference reports to the district conference, reports to the annual conference. The annual conference reports to the district, the episcopal area, and then the episcopal area is represented by the bishop, and that makes up the board of bishops. So we have a pretty tight structure.
I can tell. It is a very, very large structure, and there are many moving parts. I'm not sure if this is an appropriate question for elder pastors such as yourself, but did anyone influence you to become, I'm not sure if that's a proper word in a religious context, but I was just curious, did anyone influence you to become a pastor and community leader?
Well, there were some influences in my life. Grandmamas have a whole big impact on people. And grandma drug us to church when we were growing up. There was 16 of us living in a 2-bedroom house, and every room was a sleeping room, but the bathroom and the kitchen. Okay. One of the rules was you didn't do anything else unless you went to church. And from an early age, I was always encouraged to be a leader, encouraged to be out front, and to make a difference. I was in elementary school. I remember I was the fire chief and the safety patrol chief and the president of the school, and so I've always kind of fallen into leadership roles. My uncle, God rest his soul, and most of my family were educators, and so being in the academic world was important. I'm also a member of the greatest fraternity in the world, the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, built on the cardinal principles of manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift, founded at Howard University in 1911. And so with that and those structures, those places, we have gifts, graces, and talents that the God gives us. And then there's a thing called a calling. And I believe, my grandmother told me a long time ago, she said, boy, God's going to do something with you. And I was trying to make sure that he didn't. So I ran as long as I could. And then one day, everything seemed to fall into place. Things started to line up. And it was like, now is the time. And since then, I've been on the trajectory to make a difference. Our life challenges, the book of James comes to make us strong, to increase our faith, help us have endurance and perseverance. And Lord knows I've been through enough I got enough scars, and I don't look like what I've been through to be able to relate and meet people where they are, and try not to be emotional. God's been amazing to me. And so I've counted as a privilege and an obligation to be able to work on his behalf and to try to make the connection of people, no matter where they are, with the Creator, so that the book says he knows the plans that he has for us, plans to prosper us and not to harm us, and to give us a future with hope. That's Jeremiah chapter 29. And many times we stop there, but if we keep going, he says, if you search for me with your whole heart, mind, soul, and body, you will find me. And I will be your God, and you will be my people. And because of that, he doesn't want any of us to go feeling abandoned or lost. And I just feel that that's my influence to make sure that I can make a connection, because life is too short for us to think that we're all by ourselves.
Wow. You know what? I could feel inside of you the passion, because knowing you, Pastor Harris, I could tell, my Lord, you have really had some challenges. But you know what? You are one of the most optimistic men and leaders I have ever met. Regardless of whether your pain, regardless of whether your circumstances, you always find a way to keep your mind focused on helping others, you know, and take it away from yourself.
I do. I was introduced to a song. I mentioned my uncle. He used to sing a Mahalia Jackson song. If I can help somebody as I travel along, if I can cheer somebody with the words of song, if I can show somebody that he or she is traveling wrong, then my living won't be in vain. And that's my life's mantra. Just to try to make sure that I can be and make a difference in people's lives, that they can see a greater hope, that they can experience justice, equity, and equality, and be heard and appreciated in this process. Jesus said that I'll never leave you or forsake you. God said that many times in the Old Testament. And just to bring that, sometimes we feel disconnected, sometimes we feel lost, sometimes we feel lonely, sometimes we feel, and we could be in a room full of people and still feel that. But if we have the knowledge that nothing can separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus, then we can keep on going. We can say, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. God before me, then who can be against me? You can stand in front of a troop. You can stand in front of a Trump. You can stand in front of anybody else in the world. And you can say, God on my side, I can't lose with the stuff I use.
That's right. You know what, Pastor Harris, can you kind of describe some of your research ideas and findings that you've learned from just your intense study on helping not only people of color, students of color, but in particular African American males?
African American males are a great prized possession, so much so that they have been from the early onsets in this country, there's been focus on diminishing the African American male because of our strength, because of our ability to move into places and to adapt. We are from our ancestors who were the first people and creative and blessed of the Lord. And because of the target that's on the back of African American males, everything under the sun has been thrown at us. And what I always want to make sure I help African American males to see and to understand that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that we're more than a sports figure, and we're more than entertainment. We're complex people, and with our complexity, we are the heart of the village. And when I work with young men, especially, I work with them. Our fraternity has a program called the Omega Gents, and the program that I work with out here is called Ms. Velma Wilson started the program Girls Rock and Kings Rule. And I work with the boys, the young men in King's Rule, reminding them that we are a royal priesthood. We are more than what people want us to be, and we cannot allow ourselves to be diminished, to be separated and divided. We've got to stop fighting one another, because I am my brother's keeper, and together we stand, and divided we fall. And the way of the colonizer has always been to distract us and to destroy us and to pit us against one another. We're strongest when we stand shoulder to shoulder. We're strongest when we stand side by side. And we're strongest when we build on each other's strengths, not playing each other down, not bullying each other, but picking each other up. One of the tenets of our fraternity is we lift as we climb. And so while I'm trying to strive, I hate the crab in the barrel syndrome, because it means that nobody gets out. Somebody should be able to get out and help somebody else up. And so as I acknowledge and I appreciate you, watching you throughout the years and what you've done, you've instilled that same thing in everybody you've come in contact with. You can do better. I love making that statement. That's a sad clap, because you can do better. You can, even clapping, you can do better than that. You put your best foot forward, and then you continue from there and you build on that. And so these young men, I try to tell them, it's not about getting kicked out of class because you're trying to mask what you don't know. Let's deal with what you don't know firsthand. It was one of the situations in our historical society that women were rewarded for not having a man in the house. And so as a result of that, that was part of the systematic demise of the African-American male, is the fact that you could make these babies, you couldn't stay in the house. They give her more money. They tell her that if she had somebody, they would have to take her money away from her. And then what does that leave the African-American male? So when we talk about Papa was a Rolling Stone, wherever he laid his hat was his home, that was something that was not telling the full story. He didn't have a house, a place to put his hat all the time. There was some that were able to stay, but there's some that had to leave so that the betterment of their family would be imagined and realized. I mean, some people call it a cop-out, but if we look at the real systemic racism that we face each and every day, I mean, we don't make I heard in one of Malcolm X things, we don't grow the drugs. We basically sell them. We don't import them. We don't drop the guns in neighborhoods, but we use them because somebody has helped us to disenfranchise us, to make us against one another. So my role now, I see it, is to try and pull us back together to see the hope. I had a fourth grader last year attempt to commit suicide. A fourth grader attempt to commit suicide because life has been so bad for him. That's unheard of. And so how do we do this? And death by black or brown has to stop. You and I grew up next to each other. And I'm talking about the systematic challenge. This is why I have to help them see the what's behind the curtain and the wizard that's pulling the levers. Is to see that you and I grow up next to each other. You eat at my house, I eat at your house. Our mothers take care of us because maybe dad wasn't around, but we did everything together. But now we're arch enemies. We're fighting over territory. What territory? Somebody has put us in a place where we believe that we could be separated to fight over a girl, over bling, over a ride. Now, one of us ends up dead, the other one ends up jail. We lost two. And we've lost the children along because they don't have anybody, no positive male role model to pour into them. I deal with kids all the time right now, young men all the time right now, whose fathers or uncles or brothers are in and out of jail. And so their ambition is to be like them. And it's like, no, that's not the way. I watched the movie once, and I'll take up all your time. American Me with Edward James Olmos in it, and talked about the Hispanic community. And as a child, he went to jail as part of the juvenile system. And when he came back into society, he had missed so much life that he did not know how to have a relationship with a female.
Wow.
So he actually treated her like he had been treated and seen people treated in an incarcerated situation. Hurt people hurt people. And we only do what we know to do unless we have a different education, different exposure, and different experiences. And once we have that, then we have to have a different environment. And then we become examples in that environment so that we can show what excellence really looks like. And so that is the process that I try to use and incorporate something in their lives that they're not accustomed to. Something they can see that they can break the cycle, break the chain, because I'm the elder now. You know, my uncle died, and he died at 96 years old, and I buried him last year. And it dawned on me that he was the last of my mother's siblings, and there was nobody else in our family that could pour into the generations coming behind us like they poured into us. So I count it as my brother died at 50 years old after coming back from Vietnam. And so I, at that point, became the patriarch of the family, and that was 1996. And so for me now, life is not about me, but it's more about those who follow behind me. There's a poem called Bridge Builders by Mr. Drumgoole. And if anybody gets a chance to read it, they asked the story in summary, they asked the story of this old man who crossed over a chasm that was wide and deep. And somebody said, your life is over. Why would you do that? Why would you go and try to build a bridge? He said, I just need you to know that there's somebody coming after me. And so that's my driver. That's my motivator. That's where I come from. And especially if you kill the seed, then you're bound for extinction. And so we need to keep our seeds alive. Females can't procreate by themselves, and our young men need to step up, be responsible, pull their pants up, and walk with dignity and respect in this world and society that wants to count them out.
Wow. You know what? Wow. You've preached a whole sermon on that. You know, and that's wonderful. Pastor Harris, you know, what challenges have you faced individually just as a man of color in America?
It's funny. I told you I moved from Philadelphia to North Carolina. Major culture shock for me, even though I'd been going back and forth for summers and Easters and the like. When we finally were there for good, it was when schools were being integrated. And I was one of many, no, I was one of few in most of my classes. And I recall a situation where my brother and I used to have to, all our family used to have to walk to school. And one day on the way from school, my brother and I were walking together, and this Caucasian guy on a unicycle with a pistol in his hand rolled up behind us and said, y'all get back into N-Town. And it was then that I realized that life was different. My uncle and his fraternity brothers had to go to a KKK meeting at the fairgrounds in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and tell them that there's no meeting in this town that we're not part of. And the Grand Wizard and his people had to dismiss their meeting because of that. So I've seen and known. I grew up in high school where in the locker room, I had guys asking questions like, we were getting dressed and said, where's your tail? Because they had been taught that Black boys had tails. So there's a lot of things we had to dispel. When I worked in corporate diversity and inclusion at AAA, I had come in from the military. And in the military, I was able to grow a 1/4-inch beard. It seems very minute and very small, but I was able to grow a 1/4-inch beard because Black men suffer from Haley pseudofolliculitis barbitis. I learned that in the military. In other words, we get razor bumps. We can't cut our hair all the way close to the skin because our hair curls. The military recognized that. But when I got to corporate America working for AAA, I had to wear a white shirt and I had to shave every day. I couldn't have any facial hair. And one day,
oh, wow.
And so I was bleeding on my white collars, and people had to put up with that. And one day, the president and CEO, when they were trying to first keep diversity kicked off, I had to have a conversation with him. I said, listen, in the military, I was able to have a 1/4-inch beard because they understood that Black people's hair grows differently. Here in corporate America, you're requiring me to shave every day, to hurt myself and cut myself, and you're requiring your clients to look at blood on my collar every day because I can't get rid of these bumps. And he looked at me and he said, I never knew. I always paid attention that we'll clean cut. I said, your hair grows straight. Ours doesn't. I'm Black. I'm different. And so when I have conversations now, I let people understand and know that I've been Black probably more times than most people. I was a Black boy. I've been a Black father. I'm a Black brother. You know, I'm a Black educator. I'm a Black pastor. So all the times we're Black, you know, and when I worked in corporate America, I worked in diversity and inclusion on a corporate level. And I had to remind people. I had a situation one time. I was working with a guy who was a Japanese American. He was blind. And he said, Ed, he said, you're about 6 feet tall, right? And I was like, yeah. He said, you're a Black guy, right? And I said, yeah. He said, come here, I want to show you something. So we went down on the first floor of Van Ness Avenue. We stood by the door, and conditioning before we get to be 13 years old tells us certain things. And so he said, I'm gonna teach you something, show you something. And I said, okay. He said, society has been taught that if somebody's handicapped, that you help them. But society's also been taught to be afraid of Black men. So we're standing at the door, and here comes this white woman, and she comes up, and he said, I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. She's not gonna know whether to help me or to clutch her purse. And sure enough, she hesitated. She waited. And he says, that's the difference of being Black in this country. I had one of the diversity technicians, a very high person, I think her name was Kay Iwata, and she was raising a son who was biracial. And she said she never thought that she needed to teach her son about how to act when stopped by the police. But he hung out with a lot of people of color. And so he did not get a chance to specialize on his privilege. He got a chance first to be seen based on the color of his skin. He was brown. And so as a result of that, there was a whole teaching for the C-suite in the organization about that, because they didn't want to see the differences, because they prefer we assimilate instead of integrate. And so as a Black person in America, I always try to make sure we always are treated with dignity and respect, and that we don't ever fall beneath our own potential.
Wow. Reverend Harris, what a wonderful conversation I have had with you. You have had successes, challenges. You've had many emotional inquiries about how to help people. You've had success. You've worked as a community leader, as a pastor, as a husband, as a father, and you've done well, and I'm proud of you. I want to ask you your final question. Can you share any thoughts or ideas, or do you have any thoughts or ideas you would like to share just about your mission in general with our digital community?
I would like to share that we can live, we can be in a better place when we work together and come together. At the end of the day, you hurt us, we cry. You cut us, we bleed. We're more alike than we are different. And if we celebrate our differences, if we learn that in nearly every culture that there is food, fellowship, family, there's fun, and there's faith, then we find that we can build on what we don't know about each other, so that we could be more empathetic when it comes to the plight of individuals. It is our responsibility, I believe, to start with ourselves and to look out. It's my responsibility to try to understand where you're coming from before I judge what you're doing. Your pain, your anguish, your struggles. For me to understand, empathize, because I have my own. I didn't tell you that I was on dialysis for 9 years before I got a kidney, and come this December, I will have, the Lord says the same, I will have a kidney that's 4 years old. I didn't tell you that over a year ago I had my leg amputated, but I can't stop, won't stop. As long as I got breath in my body to represent the God that breathed in me and I became a living soul, I'm going to do what I can do to make life better on this, because I am his ambassador and I'm here to try to make a place of peace in this world. Thank you, doctor, for your time, your energy. I was wondering what in the world I was going to be able to say and how, in fact, I was going to say it. And even when you called and I offered the interview, I was like, why, who, me? But as I'm sitting here and sitting with you, we've sat together a number of times and broken bread and eaten together and even cried together sometimes.
That's
but
right.
I appreciate you
Very, very much.
for being who you are, for showing up, and for sacrificing yourself to be a leader in our community, to lift people up when they're down, to give them hope and courage, and to allow them opportunities that they would not ever have thought that they would see. Because you too are a gift to this world, and I thank you for it.
God bless you. Thank you. Dr. Reverend Edward Harris, as the CEO of Professor for Life Incorporated, from my heart to yours, I want to thank you dearly for taking the time out of your schedule. It is obvious to me that you have a passion and love for people that is really found in the character of who you are as an individual. God created you that wonderful person. I deeply love you. Professor for Life Incorporated, we honor you, and we thank you, sir, for taking the time to share your wisdom and insight with the world. God bless you and be blessed.
Thank you, Doc. Appreciate it. God bless you.
Bye-bye now.